Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to an exciting exploration of one of the world's most remarkable economic success stories. I am your speaker host Sarhi, and tonight we're diving into a question that captivates business leaders, economists, and curious minds alike. How did Singapore, a tiny city-state off the coast of Malaysia, become one of the most prosperous nations on earth? Picture a small island barely 280 square miles, with no vast oil fields, no sprawling farmlands, and a population of just 5.6 million in 2019. Yet Singapore has transformed itself into a global hub for finance, business, and trade, earning praise as one of the easiest places in the world to do business. Until recently, it held the World Bank's top spot for ease of doing business, only to be narrowly overtaken by New Zealand. Even with this silver medal, Singapore's achievements are extraordinary. It's a nation with little land, scarce natural resources, and a modest population, yet it commands a GDP per capita of over $65,000 US in 2019, rivaling the wealthiest countries. So what's the secret? How does a small spit of land become the economic powerhouse of Southeast Asia? Tonight, we'll unravel this story, exploring Singapore's journey from a British colonial outpost to a modern marvel. We'll see how its strategic location, clever policies, and role as a regional middleman have fueled its rise, blending free market dynamism with thoughtful government intervention. We'll also dive into its governance, cultural diversity, and technological innovation, painting a comprehensive picture of a nation that thrives against the odds. Let's dive in and discover why Singapore shines so brightly on the global stage. Imagine Singapore, a gleaming metropolis of towering skyscrapers, bustling ports, and vibrant streets, all packed into an island smaller than many cities. Its skyline rivals New York or London, yet it's a nation with fewer people than many urban centers. In 2019, Singapore's economy was a beacon of success, with a GDP of over $370 billion US, according to the International Monetary Fund. Its per capita wealth places it among the world's elite, surpassing many larger nations. But Singapore's success isn't built on natural bounty. Unlike oil-rich Norway or resource-abundant Australia, Singapore has no significant natural resources. Its land is limited, with only 2% suitable for agriculture. It lacks the vast labor pools of countries like China or India, and its population speaks multiple languages: English, Mandarin, Malay, and Tamil, which could have been a barrier to unity. Yet Singapore thrives. The question is, how? The answer lies in its ability to capitalize on its strategic position, adopt smart economic policies, and embrace its role as the ultimate middleman in Southeast Asia's booming trade networks. Let's start with Singapore's history, because understanding its past is key to grasping its present. The story begins in 1819, when the British arrived on this small island at the southern tip of the Malay Peninsula. They saw its potential as a trading post, a halfway house for the British East India Company's operations in Southeast Asia. Singapore's location was perfect. It sits at the crossroads of major shipping routes connecting Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. The British turned it into a bustling seaport, laying the foundation for its economic future. This wasn't just a random outpost, it was strategically chosen to control trade through the Strait of Malacca, one of the world's busiest maritime corridors. Ships carrying spices, silk, and opium stopped here, making Singapore a vital link in the colonial trade network. But the real transformation came in 1869 with the opening of the Suez Canal. This engineering marvel connected the Mediterranean to the Red Sea, slashing travel times between Europe and Asia. Suddenly, Singapore's port became a critical node in global trade, doubling the region's trade volume, as noted in studies like Fletcher's work on the Suez Canal. For the next century, Singapore prospered as a British outpost, much like Hong Kong, serving as a stable hub for commerce in a volatile region. During this colonial period, Singapore's economy was modest but promising. It was a melting pot of cultures, Malays, Chinese, Indians, and Europeans drawn by trade opportunities. The port handled goods from tea to rubber, and the city grew as a commercial center. But prosperity was limited by colonial constraints. The British prioritized their own interests, and Singapore remained a cog in their empire. It wasn't until the 20th century that Singapore's path took a dramatic turn. In 1957, it gained partial independence from Britain as part of Malaysia, and in 1965, it became fully independent. This was a bold move, but it came with immense challenges. Independence meant losing the economic backing of Malaysia and the stability of the British Empire. Singapore faced high unemployment, with rates as high as 10% in the 1960s, and poor living conditions, with many residents in overcrowded slums. International companies preferred dealing with the familiar Union Jack over a newly formed, untested micronation. Imagine the uncertainty, a tiny island barely 20 miles across trying to stand on its own in a world dominated by giants like the United States, Japan, and emerging powers like China. But Singapore's leaders, particularly Lee Kuan Yew, its first prime minister, had a vision. They knew Singapore couldn't rely on traditional resources or a large domestic market. It had no oil, no vast farmlands, and a population too small to drive internal consumption. Instead, they turned its disadvantages into strengths, crafting a strategy to make Singapore indispensable to the region. Lee Kuan Yew, often called the architect of modern Singapore, understood that a small nation must be smarter than its rivals. His government set out to make Singapore the region's brain, coordinating trade, finance, and services rather than competing in raw production. This vision, detailed in Lee's book From Third World to First, transformed Singapore from a struggling port into a global powerhouse. The cornerstone of this strategy was foreign investment. Singapore's government knew it needed global capital to grow. They created a business-friendly environment that was almost unmatched. Corporate taxes were kept low, at 17% in 2019, often reduced to 5–12%, with incentives for industries like tech and finance. There's no tax on capital gains or dividends, a magnet for investors. Personal income tax is progressive but capped at 22% for high earners, and many pay far less due to exemptions. Unlike some countries with red tape that stifles startups, Singapore made it easy to do business. The World Bank's Doing Business report praised its streamlined processes. Registering a company takes just a few days, and permits are processed swiftly. Compare that to places where bureaucracy can delay projects for months. This ease of doing business wasn't just a slogan, it was a deliberate policy to attract multinationals. By 2019, over 70% of Singapore's economic output came from foreign companies, particularly in banking, shipping, and oil, according to studies like Mirza's Multinationals and the Growth of the Singapore Economy. But Singapore didn't just roll out the red carpet for businesses. It invested in its people. The government took a hands-on approach to human development, focusing on education and skills training. Schools were modernized, and vocational programs were expanded to prepare workers for high-value industries. In the 1960s, Singapore's literacy rate was below 70%. By 2019, it was near 100%, with students topping global rankings in math and science, according to the Programme for International Student Assessment, PISA. This wasn't just about producing graduates, it was about creating a workforce that could compete globally. Imagine a young Singaporean, Priya, who starts school in a state-funded program, learns English and Mandarin, and trains as an engineer while interning at a port. By 25, she's managing logistics for a global firm like Maersk, earning $60,000 a year. This skilled workforce is a key reason companies like Apple and Goldman Sachs set up shop in Singapore, driving economic growth. Let's dive into why Singapore is so attractive to specific industries. First, its location is unbeatable. The Strait of Malacca, through which 25% of global trade flows, is Singapore's lifeline. In 2019, its port handled over 37 million containers, making it one of the world's busiest. This isn't just about geography, it's about infrastructure. Singapore invested billions in its port, with state-of-the-art cranes, automated systems, and 24/7 operations. Ships from China, Japan, or Europe stop here to refuel, unload, or transfer goods, generating revenue. But Singapore didn't stop at being a port. It became a middleman for the region, facilitating trade and services rather than producing raw goods. For example, while it has some deep-sea oil reserves, it can't compete with giants like Saudi Arabia or Indonesia. Instead, it refines oil for others, hosting one of the world's largest oil refineries. Companies like ExxonMobil and Shell operate massive facilities in Jurong Island, processing crude oil into fuel, lubricants, and chemicals, then shipping them across Asia. This refining business, worth billions annually, leverages Singapore's location and efficiency without requiring vast land or resources. Banking is another pillar of Singapore's economy. The city-state is a financial powerhouse, rivaling Hong Kong and London. Its banks, like DBS, OCBC and UOB, manage trillions in assets, serving as a neutral base for companies operating in Asia. Why neutral? Singapore's political stability and strict legal system give investors confidence. Unlike some neighbors with volatile politics or corruption, Singapore's government is predictable, with transparent laws protecting contracts and property. This trust is crucial. Imagine a multinational corporation, say a tech giant like Google, choosing where to base its Asian headquarters. Singapore's low taxes, skilled workforce, and reliable legal system make it the obvious choice. In 2019, it hosted over 4,000 multinational companies. From tech firms like Microsoft to financial giants like JP Morgan, these companies employ thousands, pay taxes, and drive economic activity, creating a virtuous cycle of growth. Tourism, while not the largest sector, adds to Singapore's success. The city-state's small size limits its appeal as a standalone destination, unlike Thailand's beaches or Japan's cultural heritage, but its strategic location makes it a perfect stopover. Travelers flying between China, Japan, India, Australia, or the Middle East often pass through Singapore's Changi Airport, consistently ranked among the world's best. In 2019, Changi handled over 68 million passengers, boosting hotels, restaurants, and attractions like Marina Bay Sands or Gardens by the Bay. Picture a family from Sydney stopping in Singapore en route to Dubai. They stay 2 nights, visit the Merlion statue, dine at a hawker center, and shop at Orchard Road, spending $2,000. Multiply that by millions of visitors, and tourism becomes a significant contributor. Singapore Airlines, a global leader, enhances this, offering seamless connections and world-class service, further cementing Singapore's role as a travel hub. What makes Singapore's economy truly unique is its blend of free market and socialist policies. On the surface, it looks like a capitalist paradise. Low taxes, minimal regulation, and skyscrapers filled with bankers and hopeful interns. But dig deeper, and you'll find government intervention that ensures social stability and long-term growth. Take housing. 90% of Singaporeans own their homes through the Housing and Development Board, HDB, a government program offering subsidized flats. This is a socialist policy at heart, ensuring affordability in a city where private housing can cost millions. A family in Bedok can buy a 3-bedroom flat for $200,000, far below market rates in global cities like London or New York. This gives citizens a stake in the economy, fostering stability and productivity. Without affordable housing, workers might struggle to survive, reducing efficiency. Instead, Singaporeans like Priya, our engineer, can focus on their careers, knowing they have a secure home. Another striking example is Singapore's approach to cars. With limited space and a dense population of 5.6 million, cars could cause gridlock and pollution. Instead of banning them outright, which might seem authoritarian, the government uses a capitalistic solution with a socialist goal. Registering a car is prohibitively expensive. A base Honda Civic cost $104,000 US in 2019 due to a limited license system, high registration fees, and taxes. This Certificate of Entitlement (COE) system caps the number of vehicles, discouraging ownership while encouraging use of world-class public transport like the MRT and buses. The revenue from car fees, billions annually, funds transport infrastructure, reducing the need for cars. It's a clever balance. The market sets prices, but the government shapes behavior for the public good. Imagine a young professional, Wei, who considers buying a car but opts for the MRT when he sees the $100,000 price tag. He saves money and the city stays congestion-free. This pragmatic mix avoids the pitfalls of pure capitalism, where unchecked markets can lead to inequality, or heavy-handed socialism, which can stifle innovation. Let's explore this blend further. Singapore's low taxes attract businesses, but the government still collects revenue through targeted levies, like the 7% goods and services tax, GST, in 2019, or property taxes. This funds world-class infrastructure, think gleaming airports, efficient trains and modern hospitals, as well as healthcare and education. Unlike some countries where tax evasion is rampant, Singapore's system is transparent, building trust. Businesses know what to expect, and citizens benefit from public services. The government spends about 4% of GDP on healthcare, ensuring universal coverage, and 5% on education, producing a literate, skilled population. This balance is why Singapore ranks high on the Human Development Index, with a life expectancy of 83 years and near universal literacy, according to the United Nations. Singapore's education system is a cornerstone of its success. The government invests heavily in schools, polytechnics, and universities, producing a workforce that's among the world's best. In 2019, Singapore students topped global PISA rankings in math, science, and reading, outscoring peers in the US, Europe, and even Japan. This isn't just about academics. Vocational programs train workers for specific industries like shipping, finance, and tech. For example, a student like Priya might study engineering at Nanyang Technological University while interning at a port, gaining hands-on skills. By her mid-20s, she's managing logistics for a global firm, contributing to Singapore's $370 billion economy. This skilled workforce attracts companies like Google, which has a major hub in Singapore, employing thousands and driving innovation. Education spending, at 5% of GDP, is a long-term investment that pays dividends in productivity and growth. But Singapore's success isn't just about policies. It's about a vision rooted in pragmatism. Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore's founding father, understood that a small nation must be smarter than its rivals. In the 1960s, Singapore's GDP per capita was just $500, comparable to developing nations. Lee's government built infrastructure, ports, airports, roads, and courted foreign investment with incentives. They also cracked down on corruption, ensuring a transparent system. By 2019, GDP per capita soared to $65,000, a 130-fold increase, as detailed in Lee's From Third World to First. This wasn't luck. It was a deliberate strategy to make Singapore the region's brain, coordinating trade and finance rather than competing in raw production. Think of Singapore as a conductor, orchestrating Asia's economic symphony while others play the instruments. Let's compare Singapore to other nations to highlight its uniqueness. Hong Kong, another city-state, shares a British colonial past, a major port, and a financial hub status. But Hong Kong's political challenges, especially after its 1997 handover to China, contrast with Singapore's unwavering stability. Malaysia, Singapore's neighbor, has resources like oil and palm oil but lags in per capita wealth, $11,000 in 2019, due to less efficient governance and higher corruption. Larger economies like the United States, with a GDP per capita of $63,000, rely on vast markets and resources, while Singapore thrives on efficiency and trust. In Africa, nations like Nigeria with oil wealth show how resources alone don't guarantee prosperity without infrastructure and stability. Singapore's model, low taxes, strong governance, human investment, is a masterclass in turning limitations into strengths. Singapore's cultural diversity also plays a role. With 4 official languages, English, Mandarin, Malay, Tamil, and a population of Chinese, Malay, Indian, and other ethnicities, Singapore could have faced division. Instead, it's a model of harmony. English as a common language facilitates global business, while cultural festivals like Deepavali and Hari Raya boost tourism. This diversity attracts multinationals needing a multilingual workforce. For example, a bank like HSBC can hire staff fluent in Mandarin and English, easing operations across Asia. Policies promoting racial harmony, like HDB's ethnic quotas in housing, ensure integration, strengthening social cohesion and economic stability. Technology is another frontier. Singapore is a leader in fintech, with blockchain and digital banking hubs emerging by 2019. The government's Smart Nation initiative aims to digitize the economy, from cashless payments to AI-driven logistics. For instance, Grab, a Singapore-based ride-hailing and fintech giant, serves millions across Southeast Asia. This innovation attracts investment and keeps Singapore competitive. The Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, fosters a regulatory sandbox, allowing startups to test financial products without heavy red tape. In 2019, Singapore ranked among the top 10 global innovation hubs according to the World Intellectual Property Organization, with patents in AI and robotics. Singapore's governance model deserves a closer look. Its parliamentary system, dominated by the People's Action Party, PAP, since 1965, ensures continuity. Critics call it semi-authoritarian due to limited political opposition, but supporters argue it delivers results. Corruption is nearly non-existent. Singapore ranked 3rd on Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index in 2019. This clean governance attracts investors wary of bribery or instability elsewhere. The government's meritocratic approach, hiring top talent into civil service, ensures efficiency. For example, urban planning is meticulous with green spaces and public transport designed decades in advance, unlike chaotic growth in some Asian cities. Let's consider a hypothetical Singaporean family to ground this story. Meet the Tans. Wei, 35, a financial analyst at DBS, earns $80,000 a year. His wife, Aisha, 33, teaches at a polytechnic, contributing $50,000. They own an HDB flat in Tampines, bought for $250,000, and use the MRT to commute, avoiding the $100,000 cost of a car. Their daughter, May, 10, attends a top school, excelling in math. The Tans' stability reflects Singapore's system: affordable housing, quality education, and high-paying jobs. But Wei worries about rising costs. A private school for May could cost $20,000 annually. This highlights a challenge. Singapore's success comes with a high cost of living, straining young families. What can the world learn from Singapore? First, location matters, but strategy is everything. Singapore turned its geographic advantage into a global asset by investing in infrastructure. Second, balance is key. Mixing free market incentives with government intervention ensures growth and equity. Third, investing in people pays off. Education and housing create a productive workforce. Fourth, being a middleman is lucrative. Singapore's facilitator role shows small nations can lead. Fifth, trust drives investment. Transparent laws and stability attract billions. Sixth, adaptability is crucial. Singapore's shift to tech and sustainability keeps it ahead. Challenges loom. High living costs, rents in central areas exceed $3,000 a month, strain young workers. Dependence on foreign investment, which accounts for 70% of output, risks vulnerability to global downturns. A 2019 study by Chang and Wong noted oil price fluctuations could impact refineries. Inequality with a Gini coefficient of 0.36 is rising, though lower than in the US, 0.41. Climate change threatens this low-lying island, but initiatives like floating solar farms show proactive planning. Singapore's small size limits scalability. It can't become a manufacturing giant like China. Looking to 2035, Singapore could dominate fintech and green tech, with smart nation driving AI and renewable energy. Strengthening social safety nets could curb inequality. A worst-case scenario, global trade disruptions or sea level rise, could hit hard. But Singapore's resilience, seen in its recovery from the 2008 crisis, suggests adaptability. By 2050, it could be a carbon-neutral hub, leading Asia in innovation. In closing, Singapore's wealth is a story of vision and pragmatism. Its strategic location, smart policies, and middleman role have made it a global hub. Blending free market dynamism with government foresight, Singapore shows small nations can achieve greatness. Thank you for joining me on this journey into Singapore's economy. It's a story of turning limitations into strengths and a reminder that prosperity comes from strategy, not just resources. Let's keep watching Singapore, learning from its success, and asking, can it stay the region's shining star? Thanks for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed this exploration.